Hello, and welcome to the Freedom Challenge online podcast. Here at the Freedom Challenge, we strive to do good by helping enslaved women and children to do more than you ever thought physically possible, and to do it together by connecting women with a heart for a hurting world. We hope you enjoy your time being informed and encouraged with host Tracy Daugherty and our amazing guests. So let's get ready and join Tracy for this week's episode.
Welcome back to the Freedom Challenge online podcast. This is your host and the director of the Freedom Challenge, Tracy Daugherty. And today I have a friend and the director of the Freedom Challenge Africa, Jessica Whittle. I've been looking forward to having this conversation. We've talked about just sharing and expressing our mutual passion for the work that we get to do. So I am welcoming Jessica. I want to let everyone know what a remarkable woman she is. Jessica is been in her position now, I think 2 years. And the moment I met you, Jessica, I just knew that I was in the presence of someone very special, someone deeply rooted in God. If I recall, you had just gotten married, someone who is probably the smartest one in the room, but won't let you know it because she's filled with humility as a wonderful leader. She has great history in the work of the kingdom, and I'm excited for you to be with me today to have this conversation.
Wow, Tracy, thank you so much. Is that me you're talking about? Yeah, it's good to be back on another podcast again. I'm so honored that you decided to invite me again. And yeah, I am really privileged to have met you, Tracy, and just to see you lead. I remember when I was appointed as interim, leader of the ministry here in Africa. You invited me to an online call with your team and just introduced me to everyone. And you were so welcoming and so encouraging. And that was the start. And then I did the Camino Challenge and got to know you some more. I saw that you were someone who got down and dirty and also did the challenge with everyone and also encouraging everyone along the way. And I really saw how you were such a strong spiritual leader. And you spoke to me, cut straight to the heart so many times. And I really appreciated that time as I was sort of starting the ministry. Soon after that, I was appointed as, the full-time in this role. And it was a bit of a commissioning, I think. I remember you praying for me. I think it was the sort of celebration time that we had, and it meant so much to me. And just to get emails and see you from afar and online is always encouraging. And so, I'm really happy to be a part of this. And also just to see in my short space of time, just like knowing more about the ministry in the USA, just to see how it's grown with your leadership.
Aww.
Yeah, it's just really inspiring. So, it's good to know you at this time.
Yeah.
And happy to be here.
It's good to know you at this time because we'll talk a little bit about this throughout our conversation, but the Freedom Challenge USA, the Freedom Challenge Africa were really born together at the same time. And for those of you who may be new listeners, I'm just going to give a reminder that the Freedom Challenge was begun in 2012. So we are aging graciously and strongly. And we are a movement of passionate women who participate in physical challenges that test our limits while raising funds and awareness to disrupt the cycles of oppression and poverty that can lead to human trafficking. We're really doing that through our prayer, through our giving, and through our going, however that would look. And you really have an opportunity to have boots on the ground involvement with the OM ministries that Freedom Challenge is supporting there in Africa. And you're really in the front line supporting those leaders. And we just honor that in you. And it has just really been a joy through the years to focus on Africa and other places in the world as well. But for you, you're focusing the work in Africa. OM USA is focusing on the awareness piece in the US, but also places around the world outside of Africa. I think we're at 47 projects now that we're able to, by God's grace,
Oh,
bring
wow.
support to, which is pretty remarkable. It's pretty awesome. Okay, so let's talk. There is a big problem in the world. What is the global case? What is happening in the world? What has driven a response? Freedom Challenge USA, Freedom Challenge Africa. Like, what were we actually seeking, and what was our hearts troubled by? And I'll let you know the most current statistics, and then we can talk a little bit more, frame up this term human trafficking or modern day slavery, or however we want to call it or talk about it. But currently, the most recent stat, this is shocking. Are we ready? Just under 50 million people worldwide would be classified as being trafficked. It's just, so to put that in perspective, it's the entire population of South Korea. And that is why you and I, well, one of the reasons we wake up every day, we're passionate about, our hearts are sparked to create pathways for this to be disrupted. Now, it's interesting that sex trafficking, which I think you and I both would say people automatically go there, right? Sex trafficking, it really is 13% of what would be considered modern day slavery. So just 13% is sex trafficking, which then makes you think, what are all of the other kinds of trafficking that are happening? And so we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And 1 in 4 victims are under the age of 18. So they are children, they are minors. And a huge portion of this is happening in Africa. And you could talk about the statistics there.
Yeah, in Africa, 7 million people enslaved, and the vulnerability for Africa is 64%, which is really high. It's the highest in the world. So, yeah, you've painted a very grim picture, and unfortunately, that is the reality. And it's why we do what we do.
Yes.
It's a global crisis.
It is a global crisis. A body could be sold over and over and over again, right? A body could be used over and over and over again. And it's important, I think, when we talk about these big numbers, which can feel overwhelming, a human response, even I can feel it in my body right now, Jessica, is it's just too big. What can we do? And it was for that very reason of it's just too big. What could we do? Our desire to turn away from things that we can't fix or control is very human, right? Because we're just this one little person. But you and I have got to be a part of something that was created to offer an opportunity for an everyday woman to not just know about, but to care about and to influence her community, to know the individual stories that are in the 50 million, to understand that there is a place for every one of us, to not solve the whole thing, but to be a part of God's heart and solution for what he cares about. And I think you and I are both very passionate to say, what if we turn toward this and walk toward it versus turning away and overwhelm? And what if we took the 50 million and we saw there was just one face that God cares deeply about, and he wants them to walk in complete freedom? So that's what we get to do. But I want you to educate us, and let's talk a little bit more. We can both talk about what are the kinds of trafficking. So again, the sexual exploitation is so, prevalent in marketing and movies and conversations, but there are so many other ways that humans are being oppressed in the world.
And while we're on the topic of sexual exploitation, I mean, the obvious thing is prostitution. Women and girls are forced into prostitution, but there's also pornography, which is a big topic that, people don't talk about. It can be a very shameful thing to speak about, but it thrives online. And there's all sorts of online exploitation where girls and women are literally lured, online, and also groomed, and children as well. Trust is gained, they're isolated, it ends up being meeting in person. And so that is actually only 13%. So what else? Well, there's forced labor. And it could be in any industry. It could be mining, fishing, clothing factories. Everywhere there's industry and there's need for lots and lots of, things, materials to be made. There is most likely forced labor taking place. It's all about money and making as much money out of people as possible, reducing the costs of how to make it. So having forced labor is obvious. Domestic servitude, where people have to clean or cook, can't leave homes, can't really have a life. And then we have forced marriage, which I can say is very big in Africa and in Asia as well. It depends on the culture, really. And it includes child brides as well, because even young girls have to marry older men. Organ harvesting, where people are, kidnapped or tricked into having their organs taken out, sometimes killed for it. And then illegal activities, which could be anything, drug trafficking. And something that's really been in the news lately is scam centers. People are forced to trick people online or via telephone call to get their money. And yeah, they need to meet targets. They get beaten, they get tortured, even through shocking. And that's the thing with human trafficking, is that it's always evolving. And so the kinds of exploitation is changing according to, what criminals, want to do and how they can use people. And so being educated and being made aware is so important, so that we can recognize the signs and, really understand what it's about.
And even as you're saying this, several things are coming to mind. All of the phone calls or various things I get, these scam centers from other countries. It almost makes you want to pause. First, we need to be wise, right? We don't want to be scammed. And we know that people are out for greed, but wondering what's on the other side of that. And when that happens, maybe even taking a moment to say, ooh, is there force, fraud, and coercion behind this activity that's happening? That's just what's coming to mind. Also, I think that the whole pornography, online exploitation, even the term prostitution, one of the things I really appreciate is reframing sometimes how we see that prostitution, as the prostitute, as the one that's the target in the story, versus those that are behind that, how that individual got there. What's the story behind that, right? It makes a lot more of a compassion, empathetic perspective. You hear more and more on this whole pornography issue that so many of the people involved in this, that there's force, coercion, all of this happening behind the scenes. And so us looking at this, being aware, understanding how the dynamic is, softens our hearts to be prayerful, and also realizing this is the enemy's ground. From day one, the idea of removing freedom, the ability to think, feel, and choose from a human being under oppression is the enemy's plan. And so all of this, it's dark, it's demonic, it's entrenched in a plan of hatred toward humans, women, children. And we have to realize that this is a battlefield that's deeper than just walking in like, oh, that's so sad, or cavalierly, but there's a real need for prayer and wisdom and all of these things, which is part of the components of Freedom Challenge, is the idea of praying through these areas.
Just to add to what you're saying, on the topic of prostitution, that the woman is often forced to be there, and you don't see the trafficker behind her, you don't see the pimp story in getting there. And so when we understand that our language can change, we don't call her a prostitute, we call her a woman in prostitution, because God didn't want anyone to be prostitutes. There are men and women and children whom he loves, who he wants them to be reconciled to him.
Yes.
So we say woman in prostitution because this is something she's caught up in.
Yes.
So yeah, when we understand their victimhood and that they're enslaved, oppressed by the enemy at the end of the day, our language can change to be more loving and compassionate.
Yes, I agree. When you think about this, it's buyer, seller, product. To imagine that a woman, a child, or a man has been reduced to a product, right, with a buyer and seller, and everyone is focused on that particular piece with with not a regard for the engine underneath it. That's what's shifting, and that's what's really hopeful. Is it's taking this dehumanization away, that hyper focus is on a product, a person, and gets us thinking about what is the dark engine that's fueling this. And oftentimes judgment happens when we say, oh, this woman chose that. Often the choice was the best choice presented to her, just to survive, have a meal. Not so there's so much complexity built into these storylines that it is good for our language to change around it. And I appreciate you bringing that into clarity. So there is an official definition for trafficking, the exploitation that we're talking about. So let's talk a little bit about that. How would you define human trafficking?
How I like to define it is an exploitation of vulnerability for commercial gain. Because it's people's vulnerabilities that are being exploited, their poverty, their lack of education, their circumstances, could be conflict, it could be displacement, whatever it is, those vulnerabilities are being exploited by traffickers for profit, for commercial gain. And it doesn't necessarily have to be for commercial financial gain. It could even be for personal gain, where someone is having some kind of, personal gain, maybe not financial, over someone else. But it's their vulnerabilities that are being exploited. So when you want to get to the sort of the root cause of human trafficking, it's important to look at the vulnerabilities, because that's where you're going to help to prevent it.
When you really do think about the vulnerabilities that you even just mentioned, sometimes age is a vulnerability, right? That's why the target often is young, because there's a lack of life experience. There's a child likeness of wanting to believe. And when someone is exploiting that, they're often building trust. And with a child, that's why I really think that scripture that says, woe to the one that makes a little child stumble. They might as well put a millstone around their neck and drop into a river. So I just think about when God just goes, whoa, like I don't have another word, but whoa, we should pay attention to even just like the vulnerability of age. It also could be the vulnerability of age in being an older person. You see a lot about, elders and that vulnerability, the need. And you alluded to, lack of education and poverty, right? Like playing on greed. Oh, if you do this, you can have this. Or even sometimes playing on basic needs. All of those things. Having a mindset to say, how dark is it that would be exploited and utilized for personal and commercial gain? It's really horrifying.
Yeah. And people are often tricked into trafficking. Yep. And one of the biggest ways people are tricked is through false job, offers. People are so desperate for a better life that they want to believe that this opportunity is real and it's going to help them. And so, yeah, it just talks about, people are desperate in their vulnerability, and they think that, like, by accepting this amazing offer that's too good to be true, it'll help them, and it turns out to be the total opposite.
And the traffickers are often paying attention to the small things, those vulnerabilities, the lack of opportunity, the lack of food scarcity. All of these things play into, foster children or, orphans, those that don't have people paying attention to their life. All of these places are vulnerabilities I would say, across every cultural line. I think it's often why exploiters, traffickers will remove people from their environment and their natural, any kind of tribe, family, culture, language, move them across a border so that all of those support pieces are gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's strategic.
It's very strategic, paying attention. Even I think, in my own country, vanity and, social media culture, wanting more, greed. Traffickers come into that with young people to say, hey, I'll get you this cool bag. Or if you do this, you're going to get more likes or posts or all of those things that are ruminating and they're paying attention to culturally within individuals, specifically young people. So for all the reasons we just spoke about is why Freedom Challenge was started in 2012. And it really had to do with giving women a meaningful opportunity, an embodied experience, an opportunity to bring awareness, funds, and I would say even intercessory engagement through, movement. When you think about a human body being constricted and losing freedom, and then you think about Freedom Challenge as taking women and saying that woman is choosing to do something very hard on behalf of another, there's a really beautiful expression, an exchange or an offering of sorts. So in 2012, our first Freedom Challenge ever was gathering around 40 women across culture, country, many countries to climb and summit Kilimanjaro and to raise funds, awareness, and to grow as women. And that happened in Africa. So really from day one, the vision of how could we turn toward this issue with hope, with Christ, with involvement, with engagement that's appropriate, right? There's a lot of kamikazes and vigilantes out there just trying to break down doors and help, but they're not helping. So we really wanted to create a real opportunity for women and families and people to engage. And that's when Freedom Challenge was born. And at the same time, Freedom Challenge USA became an entity. Really, Freedom Challenge Africa began to take root. And so we've had these two sister movements happening here for all of these years, keeping the same heart aligned and providing opportunities for women to pray, for women to go, for women to give, and then in support of those that are needing the support. So here we are. It's 2025. And next year, that would be what, 15 years? No, we're in 2026. Where am I? What am I? We are in 2026. Next year, we will be 15 years old. And we have been working at this for that long. So we, way back then in 2012, decided to approach this topic in a focused manner, saying, what are we gonna focus our minds on? We're gonna focus our minds on operation mobilization projects that are actively preventing human trafficking, projects that are developing women and children, projects that are rescuing women and children that need rescue, and then the restoration piece. And so from 2012 until now, we've stayed really true to that mission. And I want to talk about some of those projects and pillars. And I'll let you start with one that I highly respect that's multiplied over and over again from probably maybe 2014, 15 until now. Probably like 8 to 10 years that TrafficWise began to, be a thing. Tell us about it.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned the different pillars or focus areas: prevent, develop, rescue, and restore. And so, yeah, TrafficWise is one of the prevention projects that's began in Africa. Um, and it's a 5-day training where people are given the reality of human trafficking, but they're also equipped with tools on how to combat it. And so people are educated and empowered. And we've seen how it has grown and how it has impacted lives and started awareness in different areas and countries in Africa. And it's even going global. A few years ago, a training was done in Hungary, and that sort of kickstarted the anti-trafficking work that's going on there. And then I will soon be speaking to friends in Moldova about how we can partner together. So yeah, it's just really amazing to see how it's growing, and it's something that is evolving. We're constantly updating the curriculum to be relevant with whatever's going on in the world. But it's a very important, project. I mean, prevention is, so imperative in this kind of work. And so, yeah, I'm always excited to share about that. And what I love is just the participants, their attitude during the week that changes. They're overwhelmed in the beginning at the reality, and at the end, they have ideas, they have tools that they can work with and do something. And so that's really great to think that we've trained so many people and they've been empowered to go and do work, and that's really what we want to continue.
Yeah. I love the multiplication factor, that this prevention piece, empowering individuals to know the facts and then be empowered to do something meaningful in their world over and over again, all over Africa, and then now moving into different parts of the world. It is beautiful. And again, Freedom Challenge really started with that in mind. What can we do to personally be empowered to turn toward this issue? And what is the issue so that we can share about it? And TrafficWise has been a wonderful example of that. And why I love prevention, and we happen to, OMUSA and Freedom Challenge USA, put so much emphasis on that in terms of funding and generosity, is because if we can see a life reached before it needs to be rescued, just think about that. All of the things that change because of reaching. And prevention really is reaching before they need to be rescued. And so we together, we love it. And there's so many ways, not just TrafficWise, education. There's so many beautiful ways. In our show notes will be a link to all the different specific ministries that the Freedom Challenge USA is currently funding and being a part of supporting. And if anyone wants to look more into that, you can check that out. There's also the development piece, the economic empowerment, the personal development, the providing the tools to walk out maybe a life that had some stumbling into spaces that you wouldn't want to be, or how to get out of that life and to build a new one. And so often the development piece, some key components are providing opportunities and skills just to have a meaningful way to live and provide for themselves, but also the community piece. We think about vulnerabilities. What makes a person vulnerable is often that they're by themselves or they're not with people who deeply care for them. So development is also community pieces, which we see in the self-help programs that we like to be a part of, We see them in Thailand. We're going to be taking a team of women to Thailand next month. And the ministries there have a lot to do with putting something in the hands of the women other than feeling like they need to sell their bodies, and empowering them with real practical things to develop that in their life. And we're seeing that, Africa has beautiful development projects, but also all over the world, there is meaningful work being done that are providing opportunities for women to be developed personally. And then there's the rescue piece. Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of that.
Yeah, yeah. Rescue is very complex, and it can be a very dangerous thing to do. And so we have one project in Africa, and yeah, it's really amazing. It's one that where people can go to the place where they're at, to the marketplace. It's for children and girls, and there's also a safe house that they can go to. But I would say it's in Africa specifically, it's the smallest out of the pillars that there is. But the great thing about the work that we do is we can partner with other organizations and projects, and so they who have the skills to do it, we can build relationships with them and partner with them together. But specifically, in Africa, and there are others in other parts of the world, but we have to be careful about what we share on this platform. But rescue is very important. And unfortunately, statistics show that 1% to 2% of victims get rescued from human trafficking. So it just goes back to the prevention being so important. But rescue is also important, and we also have a focus on it.
Yes.
In the work that we do.
Yes. Yep. And I would echo to that, some of the places that we have been able to support prayerfully and financially are in places that we really wouldn't want to share, but the work is real, it's arduous, it's slow, and statistically there's a lot that's needed for a successful rescue, because it also involves then restoration, sometimes goes back up to prevention if it's a woman with a child who's now not wanting that child to go into that life, and 100% has to do with development. So as it has to do with restoration, all of these really get wrapped into the storyline. And I think rescue and restoration are hand in hand. You can't just pull someone out and say, job done. The trajectory is often to go back to what is known. So there is a meaty amount of work, and we are honored to support and pray for the work worldwide that is about rescue.
Even in the specific projects, even though they fall under a certain pillar, they overlap with other pillars as well. And absolutely, I agree that rescue and restoration go together so well. And just thinking of the projects that I know of in Africa, just the commitment of those who work in the safe houses is just amazing. They hear heartbreaking stories, but they also have joy as they see how the victims turn to survivors and have amazing testimonies. And it's really beautiful.
Yeah. And part of like the restoration is really, and I appreciate about some of these opportunities that women have, is to not have this for the rest of your life. And specifically, I'm going to speak to Greece, where you could work in a safe place where people aren't going, oh, you're the one that was rescued and this is what this is. They can integrate back into being a human being who has a testimony of overcoming. It's messy, it's beautiful, and you don't have to walk out the rest of your life with this weight on you. And I think that is part of the restoration process, and why community and work and Jesus and friendships are all a part of that. I think about the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman, that story. And when I think about her and what Jesus said, she had all of this abuse, it was named that she had many different husbands, and the one she was with wasn't even her husband. Like, what's the story behind that? we immediately think, oh, the Samaritan woman, she was, she was she was that woman. But likely she wasn't. Likely she was embroiled in a story of vulnerability and the best choice of the choices presented to her. And Jesus was seeing her. And part of her rescue was the fact that she went back and was integrated back into society as a woman who had a voice and had been touched and had community and friends again. And that is such a beautiful picture of restoration because it was practical, right? It said that she went back to the community and told the story and everyone believed her. She had credibility. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's the kind of restoration I love seeing. And, we want to be a part of that process, as I know that you are often. Operation Mobilization is really unique in that our approach is to pray. We're leading with prayer. We're providing opportunities for people to participate in meaningful ways. Freedom Challenge, Operation Mobilization people to pray, to give, and to go. And prayer really is a huge priority in all of this for us, as well as the giving and the fundraising for the projects. But prayer is not a secondary priority. It is really actually the first priority.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've recognized and we touched on it that this crisis of human trafficking, it is a spiritual issue, and we fight this on our knees. I love what you said earlier about a God solution. God gives us the solution. He guides us as to what we should do through prayer. And that's how this ministry was built. And our ministry is within an organization that really prioritizes prayer. And I think that's a beautiful foundation. And if you think about praying, you bring the problem to the Lord, but as you think about who you're praying to, you just realize he's so much bigger than this. And yeah, he is so much greater than this. And yes, the problem is overwhelming, but through prayer we get empowered, we get guided. And so not a secondary thing.
Primary thing. Almost like everything comes from it, right? It's the center. And for that reason, I want to invite anyone who's listening to this in Africa, if you're in Asia, if you're in Australia, if you're in the US, if you're in Canada, we are having a virtual prayer online component on February 8th. And you will all hear more about that. But that unified prayer, and I'm so glad we get to partner in that prayer time together because it is the primary thing as we step into 2026. It's pretty great. And then this giving component, the opportunity for women or people to receive donations as they go on a challenge, or to tell the story of a woman or a child and to give on behalf of these ministries. I mean, you probably see more than anyone the impact that happens when those gifts come in and they are delivered to the places that are on the front lines of individual faces in prevention,
Absolutely,
development, rescue,
absolutely.
and restoration.
Yes. I mean, the reality is that it's great to have these amazing projects, but it needs money to run. And so, when gifts come in, they can be used for the various activities that is needed, and the work can go on. And so, it is really great. When the leaders see the grants coming in and I can use this for this. We were waiting for this. We need to do this. It's just really amazing.
And so you, Freedom Challenge Africa, you really have a dual role here. You are supporting and advocating for the specific ministries, boots on the ground in Africa, various places, various countries. You are also fundraising through advocacy and challenges, as we are as well, and creating avenues for women to do challenging, difficult things on behalf of. And so you're inviting women and I think men at times into the fundraising and to the challenge portion, as are we. And then those funds are going to really be the fuel and the fire behind the work that's happening there. And what I love about the challenge piece, which you can share where you guys are at with all of that now. You usually have multi-day challenges, one-day challenges, those sorts of things yearly. What I love about it is that it really targets the spiritual journey of the individual going. They are touched by God as they are believing the work they're doing is touching someone else. And so that is where the individual person, I think we see transformation. So that challenge piece, the praying, the giving, the going for Freedom Challenge is pretty important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the spiritual journey when they're undertaking the challenge. Just to hear the testimonies of it. So we kind of have restarted challenges in the Africa area. Over the past 2 years, we've had small ones, and this year we want to up the ante. This year we'll be having a more difficult challenge in Cape Town. So yeah, stay tuned for that. To those who are in South Africa and willing to travel. But something else about the challenge is that for the individual, they have, the Lord speaks to them, they have this amazing experience, but within that, there's awareness, and there's also prayer, because with every challenge, there's a prayer team. And so it just continues, the work. And so if we were only to do challenges, that would be a lot, because there's prayer involved, there's awareness involved. And then there's the actual challenge where you are challenging yourself, which is, you're kind of identifying with someone's steep challenge to freedom, while you're challenging your body physically. And yeah, I was very privileged to do the El Camino with Freedom Challenge USA. And happy to have more people experience that kind of thing in the Africa area.
And anyone who has any interest in participating in a Freedom Challenge in Africa, which you just heard, there's going to be one in Cape Town. Those will be in the show notes. I also heard us talking earlier, even before we got on this call, about just the opportunities, the desire for people, for the projects themselves. And we're going to speak specifically in Africa, that need short-term workers actually would benefit from short and long-term workers, really.
Absolutely. There are 21 projects scattered all over Africa. And something that the projects always need is people. And so there's opportunity for short-term mission trips, short-term workers, long-term workers. Yeah. And it's really exciting. People often, don't know what to do. You can pray, you can give, you can do a challenge, but you can also get involved in a project. And we invite you to do that in Africa. You are welcome.
I love it. And for those listening going, well, what does that mean? Well, in our show notes, we will also have next steps. If something perks in your heart and you're like, man, I feel like I would want to know about what I could do and maybe do a short-term trip, or maybe God's calling you to be a long-term worker. We want to help you out. So we can connect you to Operation Mobilization's mobilization team. Freedom Challenge is all about seeing that work, and humans really make the work, right? People, human beings. So here, together we can challenge ourselves. Those that are listening, Freedom Challenge USA, we've already released all of our 2026 challenges, and we're actually releasing a 2027 challenge in the next couple of weeks. We invite you to pray intentionally, and one of those ways is our virtual prayer event that Freedom Challenge Africa and USA will be a part of together on February 8th. And then to give generously. There's always an opportunity to give generously to support the work, and you will be able to find any of that on our website. All of these opportunities can move you forward into a next step. Jessica, this is a great conversation.
Wow, we've spoken about a lot of things. Really, really stated the global case,
Yeah.
and I think we've also come up with solutions. So yeah, I hope the listeners feel empowered after hearing this really, really sad state of affairs, but all that they can do and get involved in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. You are a treasure, Jessica Whittle. I hope I get to see you soon. And until next time, all who are listening, let's continue to do good by helping enslaved women and children do more than you ever thought physically possible, perhaps with Freedom Challenge USA, Freedom Challenge Africa in Cape Town, and to do it together by connecting with other women who have a heart for a hurting world. God bless.
Thanks for listening to the Freedom Challenge online podcast. If you liked what you heard, join the fight to set women and children on a pathway to freedom across the globe. We are a proud ministry of Operation Mobilization USA and encourage you to learn more at thefreedomchallenge.com and omusa.org for how you can get involved. Follow us on Facebook, on Instagram at the FCUSA, and don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to let us know what you think. We'll see you next time.